I've been reporting specifically on unionization efforts among Staten Island, New York workers, where Amazon has been going after them just like they did in Alabama. But now Amazon, apparently, the one of the richest countries on richest companies on earth, can't figure out how to provide central air conditioning or any air conditioning to workers essentially slaving for 12 hours. So this is the piece we just dropped today. I'll read some of it. We obtained complaints from workers and a lot of different things. So I titled it Prime Delivery. Amazon workers, let me put it in the super chat so you can read along here. Amazon Prime Delivery. Amazon workers fainting, carted off on stretchers amid sweltering warehouse heat. Quote, if there's another oppressive heat wave like 90 or 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside, will the facility be cool enough to work? One Amazon worker at the Staten Island warehouse complained. So as Amazon continues fighting attempts in Staten Island, New York, to form a union, Status Quo has learned of unbearably hot conditions throughout the warehouse that have resulted in workers fainting and being carted off in stretchers. Quote, from the moment we walk in, we're literally dripping wet. Natalie Monarez, a Staten Island Amazon worker who's part of the Amazon labor union group trying to form a union, told Status Quo about the extreme heat she and others are struggling through inside the gigantic warehouse that spans 15 football fields. I know you haven't seen it, Jen. This is a humongous warehouse. And just to go on break and do things, workers have to walk across 15 football fields, basically. And in some cases have to go from one side of the warehouse to the other side for work duties. So they're doing this in extreme heat. Quote, one Amazon worker who requested anonymity for fear of losing their job told Status Quo they recently witnessed 4 coworkers carted off on stretchers. Ambulances were called due to the extreme heat inside the warehouse. Quote, upstairs on the second and third floor was very hot. Just the heat rising caused a lot of health problems, the worker said. It should have been closed down for the day. The conditions are not fair and we're already working 12 hours a day. It's very similar to a prison facility. And this is one thing I want to get across to the audience. You know, for a lot of stories, it's hard to get people on the record. I've never had more problems getting people on the record than Amazon workers. Not because I don't know what I'm doing. Amazon has instilled the fear of God in these workers. If you even breathe to the media, you're fired. Honestly, the only workers who have gone on the record did so with fairly large outlets, and along with going on the record to those outlets, also filed complaints with the National Labor Relations Board. So it kind of was too big enough profile at that point where Amazon couldn't retaliate because there was media pieces and they had already made complaints to the National Labor Relations Board. But outside of that, I won't get into details because these people have not come forward and they won't speak on the record. I know of at least 2 even worse stories than this. And this is pretty bad. People are fainting, being carted off in stretchers. I know of even worse stories of terrible things happening to workers. But the workers who the terrible things are happening to, Jen, are basically, they're chilled. They are, it's a chilling effect. They don't want to come forward. These are working class people, in many cases poor people, who don't want to lose their job. And as a result, have to suffer through really inhumane working conditions. And by the way, it's not just Amazon. We know this happens to other workers in America too. Let's keep going. Derek Palmer, one of the lead organizers with ALU and a fellow Amazon worker, echoed these concerns, telling Status Quo he saw someone faint last month and get rushed to the hospital due to the hot temperatures in the warehouse. In response to the sweltering heat, Amazon has provided fans for workers, many of which don't work. There's a photo from one workstation that a worker sent to us. Quote, obviously a fan blowing the same hot air back at you doesn't really help. Connor Spence, another ALU member and Amazon employee, told Status Quo. Dana Miller, another ALU member, ALU again is the group trying to organize at this warehouse, told Status Quo she's passed HR officials in their fully air-conditioned offices wearing sweaters and hoodies. So again, these workers only have fans that are blowing hot air. HR, they got wonderful air condition, and workers are passing them in hoodies and sweaters. Many workers' faces, quote, look red, Spence said. As the heat wave inside the warehouse has continued, Spence and others told Status Coup they've recently seen a rush of ambulances zipping by as they've stood outside the warehouse at the ALU union tent. Despite the complaints, HR has rarely responded, Palmer said. Status Coup obtained some of the complaints workers have recently made to HR through the company's digital message board. So here's one image, quote, if there's another oppressive heat wave like 90 or 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside, will the facility be cool enough to work? Edison, an Amazon employee, wrote to HR. Another worker complained that they're working in 78 to 80 degree temperatures inside the warehouse. Quote, it is still way too hot, even with station fans. How is the system working properly if internal temperatures are 78 to 80 degrees? Please look into this until it's fixed properly and comfortable. Beyond the hot temperatures workers are suffering through, multiple water stations have been running empty, ALU member Monterez complained to HR. While water stations lack water, Amazon has passed out warm water bottles. Quote, we don't know how long they've been sitting or where they've been sitting, Miller told Status Coup. They taste very cloudy. Nobody drinks it because this water tasted horrible. So, Jen, you and I have walked through the streets of Flint and other places during the boiling heat of summer, but we own our own company, so we could find shelter and air conditions, if it gets too hot. These workers, and by the way, we have water bottles, often cold water bottles, when we're in the heat. So these workers are 78 to 80 degrees in a warehouse. That might not sound like a lot outside. It's a hell of a lot inside when there's not enough air circulation going on and ventilation. So the water stations are out. All they're given is fans. Amazon's net profit last year was 84%. Their net profit went up 84%. So don't tell me they can't provide central air conditioning. Don't tell me they can't provide cooler temperatures. This is absolutely absurd, Jen.
Yeah, so I have to say, last week I was in Brooklyn all week, and that's where I was doing the New York Times adversarial reporter training, and it was in a warehouse of sorts. It wasn't exactly a warehouse. It was like a mixture between sometimes an art studio warehouse. It was a space that could be used for multiple things, but the New York Times chose it. The security team chose it because we had to do things like pretend we were in active war situations and drag mannequins and do little tourniquets and do a lot of very physical things, and which I could not do all of them. One of the things with my long hauler is that my body temperature is very dysregulated, so I had to opt out. My point is, it didn't have air conditioning, and so they had gigantic fans. They had a ton of airflow, and even that wasn't enough. And so we had this, I want to make very clear, they took exceptional care of us and were very concerned about our health. We had a ton of water and hydration and those electrolyte tabs, those noon tabs. And they would stop us and say, like, even though you guys want to do these things like, carrying the mannequins to the makeshift ambulance and stuff, they would literally say, no, you can't. It's too hot to do that right now. There was a great doctor was over from Israel helping with the training, and the security team and some of the guys had been military guys, and they were literally like, no, you cannot do these. We're gonna stop. We like tomorrow, meaning that last Wednesday, we might even go to Midtown to the Times building instead because it's just too hot. And the reason is, what I learned is that heat stroke, it not only sounds scary, but it has a 50% mortality rate. So they took this extraordinarily seriously. Now, think about these Amazon workers. Here they are in a literal warehouse with these tiny little fans. I assume no great airflow. I assume it's not filled with just tons of open windows and tons of open, like, garage-sized doors. And
No,
they're
there are no windows on several floors.
jeez, and they're on they're timed, so they have to rush to do their job in enough time, and so they're rushing around. They're hot. According, Jordan's reporting shows us that they don't have adequate water, and certainly not cool water. And so I'm thinking of like the care that the New York Times folks took with us compared to the complete lack of care in the same sort of heat. So Brooklyn isn't that far from Staten Island. The Amazon is just, this is horrible, especially now that I know the complete dangers of heat stroke and the potential death that it can cause.